Good evening and welcome to the Linux Saloon. It's a place to talk tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, generally a distribution, but it could be centered around a desktop environment or an application. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion, but today is a special day. We are having an open mic night. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to ask Colin to get up on stage and sing in front of everybody, but what it does mean is we're going to ask Esnix to get up on stage and sing for everybody. No, I mean, what it's going to be is we're going to talk about different subjects, different things going on in Linux or the open source community, anything out there that is interesting. It's like we're going to a saloon, and we're going to have conversations over beverages. Like if you're me, you drink like a branched chain amino acid mix because I don't do booze. But if you're like Jason, you might get a little bit sloshy. So, Monster, never mind. Anyway, so we welcome any conversation. We will be checking the YouTube chat to see if people have anything they want to kick in or say about what's going on. And we appreciate all the input from everybody out there in the community. So thank you very much for joining. And how is everybody?
Excellent.
Good.
Doing good.
Doing good.
Very
A little lightheaded tonight.
A little lightheaded because you have less hair.
Yeah.
I think
I
it's
wasn't
like
prepared. I didn't get my bourbon ready.
He's probably got good AC right now, though. He probably feels the cool breeze.
Is that like part of spring cleaning there, Peter?
Yeah.
Like when you.
Yes. It was over 70 degrees today in Kentucky.
Yeah, it was like 50s here today. It was like a heat wave. It was great. I love it.
Yeah, it was like 82 today here in Florida. It was nice.
66.
Oh, it looks like my scaling kind of got a little bit wonky here. So
Yep,
thanks,
cutting people
Leviticus,
off.
for. I was trying to cut off Eric. You're right, and Esnix and Jason. So I apologize for that. I don't know how I screwed that up, but hey, I'm a master at messing things up. So just ask Eric.
Hey, I'm just chilling on a couch, relaxing, so it's all good.
Well, I'm glad. I know it's a whole new scene for you. This is great.
Yeah.
It's all right. The lamp
Looks a
was
little-
the best part of what you're seeing here anyway. So
Yeah. Looks a little creepy, but
I'll go this way.
It's all good. I like it. All right. So Vash, to kick this off, but what someone's doing in Linux, Vash, I am interested in knowing more about Obsidian. You released another video. I got the notification, I think today or yesterday. I cannot recall when. And I said I was going to post it on Twitter, and I didn't. So now that I've called myself out, please tell the rest of the class what's been going on with Obsidian and the neat things you are doing with it.
So I've been ultimately looking for the best application to keep track of some notes and also keep track of tasks that I want to, take care of for the YouTube channel and things like that. So I've been looking at doing it in Obsidian because I don't want to use Notion. And so one of the things I posted about today was how to set up some of the settings for daily notes, because in my opinion, the default settings for daily notes are just not conducive to actually using daily notes in Obsidian. So today was just ultimately a video talking about a little bit about that. I think my next one will be focused on getting into the task management piece of that. So I'm hoping that's going to take a little bit of time, I think, to actually get set up, but I have seen several different options for me to kind of play with, and I've seen people do some really creative stuff with like dashboards and things like that with it. So I'm curious to see what I can make up and actually see about getting something out there that potentially other content creators may even want to use.
So for those that don't know what Notion is, because I only learned of it and signed up for it because you talked about it and I just want to see what it's about. What is Notion?
So Notion is I'm not exactly sure what it's aimed exactly at, but what I see most people use it for is it's an online app that you can take, you can create databases in it and essentially link those to multiple views. So like you can have a Kanban board and you can have a table of the same information. And it can be really good for things like task management and projects and things like that. But to me, it's a bit more cumbersome to use. And I spent like 90 minutes trying to figure out how to do something. And then basically I figured out a way to get it to work. And then support came back and it's like, yeah, we don't actually allow that. And I'm like, well, why in the world would you? The whole point is like you can post your templates out there and people can download them, right? but they don't actually let you easily set that template as an actual template in what you're trying to do. You have to, like, it's just a page. And so I'm like, wow, why, how can that be so backwards? That and the fact that I don't really want to have to necessarily connect to the internet just to get to my notes and my task and all that are reasons that I'd really rather stay with Obsidian. There's some, like, a lot of YouTubers will have stuff about how they work with Notion in it. It's an interesting app, but I found it kind of annoying to try to use. Getting used to it obviously would help, but it's just not something where I would prefer to have my notes local if I can.
That makes total sense. So that's the big difference is local versus internet or network internet based. Is that part of it or a lot of it?
That's part of it. There are, like I say, so with Obsidian, all the notes are Markdown based, and so with Notion, like they're not. They're purely set up on whatever a database kind of thing that they set up. I don't know exactly what it is, but it does have a database aspect to it in Notion. It's pretty cool. Like, I'll give them that. It's a really cool idea. But yeah, it's a little overkill for what I need. And then also, like I say, I'd prefer to have local notes.
So you like Markdown's a plus for you, I take it, right?
Yes, because then I can, if Obsidian ever goes away, I at least have the notes. I mean, granted, there's some other plugins and things like that ultimately you're creating something that wouldn't make any sense from a file perspective later, like, if I'm querying something, but I at least have the information, in text documents.
Okay. I don't, for what it's worth, I've been using Joplin. I don't know if you looked at Joplin or not, but
I did not like Joplin.
No. Okay. I just like that I can choose my own backend in terms of what I use to synchronize between different clients, and also it's end-to-end encrypted, and it's Markdown, and it's hierarchical with notebooks and all that sort of thing. So
yeah, and I am thinking of setting up a local Git server and just using Git to actually sync up all of my Obsidian stuff. But I have not went that route yet. I've been trying to play around with Sync Thing for it, and it kind of works, but I don't know. I have weird things happen with Sync Thing.
I use Sync Thing with TiddlyWiki. I think I've probably said TiddlyWiki enough times to like cause someone to put a quarter in a jar by now. But I sync it up with Sync Thing, and it works pretty well. Like, Obsidian has certain features built into it that TiddlyWiki does not. But TiddlyWiki also just basically just produces an HTML file with some JavaScript in it, and so it's really easy to work with. But I make the mistake very often, like more often than I would admit, and I would never admit it on the internet, that I'll edit it on one computer and not save it, or I'll go to another computer and then I'll open it up and then I'll save it, and then I have conflicting files, and so then I realize, oh my goodness, I don't see what I just worked on, and then I'm doing cheetah flips trying to get my data back that I lost. So it'd be nice if I had a server based multi in multi out would be way better, and I think you can do that like with a Node.js instance of TiddlyWiki.
Just by the way,
yeah,
if you're using SyncThing on the back end of all of that stuff, if you enable a sort of like a file versioning, there's a bunch of different options. There's like trash can. Okay, cool. There's a version that will like always keep like an infinite amount, no matter how many revisions there are.
I keep 25.
Perfect. Okay, so
because
you got
25, or is it 24? Usually it's like a multiple of 4 somehow. But I keep several because I'm really good at making mistakes. It's like I'm a pro. I wish I could get paid for just mistakes because I would be rich. But yeah, so I use TiddlyWiki, but it doesn't have like the same fun things that Obsidian has. And in a way, I kind of wish I could convert to Obsidian, but I don't know if I'm like, I'm so entrenched in, like, I have all these different little tiddlers that I made to like make things very quick and how I take notes. But Obsidian just looks so good, and I've been watching your videos, not today's or yesterday's yet, but I've been watching them because I find them so interesting.
Yeah, it's I played around with the template in that video today, so you may see a bit more about what you could potentially do for something like that. But there's a lot there, and it's something where I really want to explore it more. I really want to play with logsec some more too. That video got a surprisingly amount of traction, and I also find that interesting as well. It's just not. I actually use logsec at work like every day,
Okay.
but I just don't end up. I'm looking to see if I can, between the two, which one's really going to be my option. And I think for home use, I think it's going to be Obsidian, just because of some of the other plugins that it has now. But the plugin community in Logseq is also really coming along.
So DasGeek said in the chat that he's got through quite a few note apps, but Standard Notes is the one that he loves the most. It makes me wonder what is about Standard Notes that you like. Are you able to link notes together in Standard Notes? I have no idea. I've never used it. I use Simple Note for simple things, just like grocery lists and the like. But I wonder what Standard Notes.
Standard Notes is pretty neat. It's lightweight, which is nice, and it's also just the UI is very clean, and it's a pleasant application to use. I'm just too cheap to pay for it.
That's fair.
I think I've asked this question before, but what is Markdown again? Can somebody explain Markdown?
It's just a formatting. Yeah, it's a way to format text that can then be rendered into like a rich version of it. So you use like hash marks as headings. So if you do one hash mark, it's H1, 2, and it's just a quick way to type out formatted notes without having to go through using a rich text editor. Yeah.
Okay. And to make it not confusing at all, Markdown is actually a markup language. There you go.
That makes it more fun.
There are various flavors of Markdown, like GitHub has a flavor, and Reddit, I think, has a flavor, and everybody. So the other nice thing, Colin, is that that's a plain text document. So if anything ever happens to Obsidian or Logseq or both of them, I can take that document and I can open it in Kate or Vim or whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. And that's what with Tiddlywinky I can do the same. I can open it up, although it doesn't look as nice, but I can open it up as a text file. And if I'm, and go through and recover it. But as long as I have a working web browser, I can access my notes, which is really nice, and it's local.
I use Cherry Tree. That's one of my favorites, Cherry Tree, and you can put links for websites and everything on there. So it's a really great reference to me, and you can have so many things down on the left-hand side panel with different nodes and different subnodes. I've even got my Arch install and all the things that I did when we did the install challenge on here a little while ago. I've got it all written down. So it comes in handy. I really like that text document.
Servan says he uses VS Code extension called Dendron to take and organize Markdown notes with VS Code. That seems like a real heavy way to do it, but hey, if that works, that's awesome. And also, DasGeek says he likes the standard notes because you can sync on all devices. Tons of plugins for Markdown or however you want to do your notes. If you like a full GUI, you can add that to spreadsheets, pictures, and can store it all. That's pretty cool.
I use Obsidian for a few things, mostly for more complex notes, not my simple stuff. But honestly, I've really found I don't know if anybody still uses it, but Evernote, I think it's called, the little elephant one. That one I find really handy for things that are not going to be extensive notes. So really simple stuff. That's just super handy.
Yeah, I used Evernote years ago when it was new, when I was excited about Android and mobile technology. Remember those days? But I started using it there, and then there was a Chrome app type thing you could run it in, and I used it for a little while, but I didn't like having my notes on the internet, so I stopped using it. That's what it boiled down to. I don't always have internet access. I'm in situations where I don't have it. Cell phone coverage is spotty in some areas around me. So I got to make sure that my systems can, function without the internet. Maybe not thrive, but at least function without the internet, so I can still be productive in some way. Well, hey, thank you very much, Vash, for telling us about Obsidian. Hopefully it helps some people out here if they're interested in taking notes on something. I know I'm a big fan of HedgeDoc, so anybody who does the things here at the show knows that. So, Steve, you have got something going on with Peppermint Os.
Not personally, no. So there's some news this week in Peppermint. We are going to be sunsetting, and I use we lightly, but we are going to be sunsetting the current forum in favor of SourceForge. It's kind of meeting a little bit of negativity, but it's according to Graphic, it's a better fit for us We have, I think it's a little bit better. It's free. Everything on SourceForge is free. We can keep other things on SourceForge. It just seems like a prime opportunity. The forum, I don't know. Not that I hated our own forum, but it was never the greatest looking. It's not like Discourse or whatever. But so they're moving. They started sunsetting this week, so I can post a link, and if someone can post this out in YouTube land, because got that on a different computer today. And a couple other things are going on. They're working on. They're getting real far, and Peter can tell you this, on the 32-bit. So it's basically a community spin of Peppermint. As Nick, I believe you know the gentleman, Mark Rosa, or
Manuel Rosa.
Manuel's, yes, thank you. He's helping with the 32-bit version of Peppermint.
Yeah, John has been testing
just did a video as well.
I've been testing it quite frequently too. I've got about 4 or 5 downloads I've been through.
A couple of other things going on, because I don't use Mastodon, but I think that we got a Mastodon presence, and we've been using Matrix. I use the Element for it. So we have a developer section and a general user section. General user section could be anybody can join. So those are some of the things that are going on with Peppermint this week. I'll talk about more in the morning when I get my notes together. So Colin, what do you got? He's got silence.
He's muted.
Turn your mic on, Colin.
Okay, is that better?
He's trying to keep secrets from us.
I don't do that very often. Speaking of Peppermint, I was using, it's good to see Esnix here today. I was using Esnix Easy Arch GNOME on my Acer Plex, but I found that the Arch updates are a bit aggressive to be using that as a server. So I've decided to reconfigure the partition with a root partition, a data partition. I've installed Peppermint on there, and apparently, as far as I know, Peppermint now is a rolling distro. So that saves me having to install anything else, and I can just keep that Plex server constant. The updates are not as aggressive as Arch. It's not many updates. I can SSH into it, just do the updates every now and then. It's less maintenance for me, so that's really good. And it has very limited applications, which suits me really fine to use that as just to serve the Plex media server. So I'm finding that really great. It works really well, and been watching some of my movies and TV shows, and it's excellent. So, and just speaking on that, I think Esnix had a question there regarding what makes Peppermint a rolling distro, which is a really good question.
There's nothing I could tell that makes it a rolling distro other than the statement that it's a continuous delivery OS, which doesn't mean much to me.
Maybe Steve can answer those questions. Where's Steve gone? Hi.
I think
he ran away.
He knew that question was coming, so he decided to go away.
I
would say that it's continuous because you don't have to nuke and pave anymore. I think you can probably just upgrade continually.
That's what I was going to say.
You could do that with Debian for a decade or more, or 2 decades or more.
Yeah, because like every 2 years, Debian comes out with a new release. I'm trying to figure out how they forward that release into the one you already have.
But that wasn't the case with
work magic.
But that wasn't the case with Peppermint before. You would always have to nuke and pave. So I guess that's the big difference now.
Well, it's the same with
Debian, but it's still a fixed release at the heart of it, though.
The last few Peppermints, 9 and 10, had upgrade paths. They did have that. Obviously not from 10 to 11, because 11 is now based on Debian. Beforehand, it was Ubuntu. Colin, to answer your question, the technical term for the rolling in the Peppermint these days is called CI/CD, Continuous Integration and Continuous Delivery. It's based on Debian stable, and by doing constant updates, they maintain that path.
Right. So they do that in the background. So they have this.
Yes.
Right.
It's still a process. They're working on a system in Codeberg where the repos right now are all based on Debian. Peppermint doesn't have its own repo, but has a Codeberg base for extra software, and they're working on an upgrade tool there. Not an upgrade tool, but if you install an ISO, you can go to this tool and upgrade to the latest Pep Hub and things like that. Huh?
Right. Okay. So it's not currently in there at the moment, but they're working on. Is that right?
The base is continuous development.
Right.
The tools are working on.
Okay, but what I heard is that their own tools will be continuously updated.
Yes, once
They're not
developed, yes.
continuously updating Bullseye supplied, which is 99% of the
You've
ISO.
now reached the end of my knowledge.
That's the
Okay.
part that I have trouble with, Esnick.
Well-
I just believe in the magic. I'm here for the
The
ride.
magic poof.
If it helps at all, I guess either way, right? Like if they're upgrading their own tooling on top of it to make sure that it's constantly rolling out, and the underlying base is also capable of doing that, then I guess it just means that it is constantly rolling. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter if it's Debian's tooling underneath or not. It is
Well-
doing that, and Peppermint didn't do that previously.
The
Which is good.
underlying base, though, is Bullseye, which isn't constantly rolling. It's fixed.
Well, the
The-
underlying of Ubuntu is also fixed, but they're able to move it up steps as well while still delivering updates. Like I think the thing is that they will provide the ability to move packages forward
Yeah,
in a similar way that Ubuntu provides
yeah,
an upgrade path.
exactly.
Okay, it's still not very clear, but okay.
Esnick,
It's just a question nagging me as I.
jump into the Peppermint forum, ask the questions, generate conversation. The challenge is now yours.
Okay.
You're asking questions here. Go ask the forum.
Oh, that's fine. I was just asking Colin because Colin mentioned it. That's all.
So my question for Colin
Yeah.
is: so how is the Plex server working out for you? Have you had any
Great.
issues? Is it okay? And you installed it
No.
like a, you installed it with like a Docker image, or was it like a, package management, or how did you install Plex?
No, when I first did it with the Archbase, I had the media in a home directory somewhere, and I believe that Plex does not like that, because I had a whole heap of issues with changing ownership where the media folder was and everything. But now I've actually used GNOME disk to mount it at /media, and the Plex server picked it up with no problems whatsoever. So you actually, there's an address where you log into Plex, and then it finds the Plex media server on your device, and then it adds it in. Then you just pick up your movies folder and your TV shows folder or whatever, and just adds them all in. And then that's pretty much it. It's you just go to your TV and to your Plex media player, and it's all there. It's great. I know the IT guy at work, he uses something, he uses some sort of online thing that picks up all the servers, so he doesn't have any issues with that, because he has to do that because his is on a, what can you say, on a hard drive, external hard drive, with a few disks in it. What do you call those things? A NAT?
A RAID?
A NAS. Yeah, NAS. I think it's a NAS.
Sports.
So he uses some sort of online thing to pick up all these stuff to play through Plex. So I'm doing it different to him, but he was the one who told me mount it at /media, you won't have any issues. So that's working well. I've been watching Breaking Bad.
What season are you on?
I just finished number 4 last night. We binge watched it because I've never seen it before, so it's quite interesting. So yes, it's working well.
I haven't actually watched. I think I watched little bits of Breaking Bad, but it didn't do anything for me.
It takes a little while to get to sort of build steam, but then once it starts, like it really pulls you in. Yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah, you can tell where they put money in certain episodes and other episodes they skimped on.
Yeah. Typically, like those production schedules, they have so much budget for the entire season, and so they have low budget ones, so they can save up that budget for the big productions. You can have some big
Yes.
bangs. Yeah.
A
So
lot
like,
of
I know,
shows are like that.
I know, like because I'm a big Star Trek: The Next Generation fan. I'm not gonna derail into Star Trek, but I know they had like what they called ship in a bottle episodes, where they're mostly character based, and so they didn't have to spend a lot on to make the episode. And then they have like their big season finale that basically shunt all their money in that direction. Well, cool. Well, that's really interesting to know about the Plex server working well. I hope that it continues to work well and Peppermint continues. I'm really excited to see what happens with Peppermint. There was a lot of negativity out there on the interwebs over Peppermint that really disappointed me. And like I watched some videos that it really actually made me unhappy that they even produced those videos. So
Yeah,
I like to see that Peppermint continue. I know it's a work in progress, and I know they want to do the best that they can. It's not like they're just doing it to go through the motions. That there's actually some passion there. So what do you got there in your hand?
that's my little HP. This was my daughter's school computer many years ago. They sold it to me for $50. That's that one that flips around into a tablet.
Nice.
But as you can see, it's quite heavy and bulky. Now my daughter didn't want this Surface Go, so I'm running my PC TLC Easy Arch on that. It's the only one that works with wireless because it's based on Arch. I think the firmware's up to date. But that's running Peppermint, and I'm using. Sorry,
you said it's an HP. What's the model number?
Oh, it's what's it called? HP. Hang on.
I like how he says HP. And he puts a
HP.
H. It's nice.
It's a HP Elite Book. It's Elite Book.
Okay.
It's an Aussie version.
Yeah, it's the Aussie version. But that's running Peppermint with mostly flat packs. So I'm trying to do everything with flat packs. Although it's a spinning drive 5400, they do open a little bit slow, but it's good enough for around the house. So yeah, I'm really putting Peppermint through its paces right now.
John's showing us his old thick book.
Thick book.
Was that
I
a
got
HP
one
as
too.
well?
I just got this one this week.
It's the HP Elite book. It's the exact same one. So
Oh, it's the same one. Nice.
Oh, sweet.
he said it, and I was like, "Hey, I've got one of those sitting here."
Yeah, they're an awesome little computer, I must say.
Actually, my plan was to load Peppermint on this, so I'm gonna
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's working well. I wouldn't mind a solid state drive in mine though, because it's starting to slow down.
Since we're bringing our thick books, this is
Thick books.
this is now when I got this thing in 2007. This was quite a bit slimmer than my previous laptop. It's a Dell Latitude D630, and I did put a sticker on it.
D630. I got one of those right here. This is what I do my 32-bit Peppermint testing on. They made a lot of those.
It comes alive and breaks things. I don't know why.
Are you able to get a wireless driver for it?
Yeah, I run OpenSUSE Tumbleweed on it. I retired the machine a little over a year ago, like from actively using it, and I decided like I just use it now. I actually used it as my main machine for 10 years.
Wow.
And I just kept upgrading it. So I went from I had like a 60 gig hard drive, like maybe 80 gig hard drive in it, and then I eventually put like a terabyte hard drive in it, and I put 8 gig of RAM in it, which it came with 2. So 8 was more than what it said it could handle, but there's a thing you could do in the BIOS to be able to handle more memory. But yeah, so I turn it on from time to time. I do a Tumbleweed upgrade on it, and I keep using it. Actually, the Nuvo drivers are almost good enough now. Like it's so close to being good enough that I could actually pull the thing out of mothballs and actually use it just a machine to type on. The keyboard is just so nice on it. Like I like my LeapBook. It's okay. The LeapBook keyboard is okay for a laptop keyboard, but that old Dell Latitude has a much nicer keyboard than these newer laptops.
The Dell Studio I got has a really nice keyboard too, and that one just died. The BIOS in it went foobar.
It happens.
So I splurged to buy me a new replacement.
How much did that set you back?
About $600.
Oh wow, that's no small.
It's a Dell Precision 7520. It's quite heavy. It's 6.5 pounds, but it's got the 1080p display, which you need a microscope to read everything on the display unless you size it up. But it's a very nice laptop. It's in like new condition. And it's got 4 USB ports on it, and it's got a SD card reader. The keyboard, it lights up, and then it stays on for a while and shuts off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice.
And it just don't shut off. It just kind of slowly dims away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does it have,
Yeah,
have an Ethernet port to go with it as well?
It has an Ethernet port. Merit, the whole bottom comes off. You can work on it. It's a 2019 model.
Yeah, I like the higher end Dells and HPs because they make it, or HP, as Colin would say, to because they're easy to work on. They're actually a lot of fun to work on. They're not awful, you know.
Yeah, this one's you can open up the bottom. Well, when I first got it and I turned it on, it's fired up into Windows mode. It was brand new install of Windows, and also started asking me all this personal information. I just stopped, shut it off, turned it over, took the bottom off, went and got one of my 1 terabyte SSDs, shoved it in its place with Linux on it, and took it from there. It does have a slot for an MVNE drive, one of those stick drives. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right because I can't afford to buy one of those yet. But it has a slot for one of those M.2 drive, I guess.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they're good. They're awesome. They're fast.
The picture on this thing is incredibly good. I mean, I go out on the couch and crawl under a blanket, and I watch Netflix on this thing. I've been watching Dark Matter on it lately. And the battery lasts, I put 4 hours on it. It went down to like 52%. So the battery
awesome.
lasts much longer than any of the other laptops I got around here, and I got a lot of them.
That's cool.
Not just any of them that are, new like this one that's coming up to the, 21st century.
I put into a YouTube chat that I also am a big fan of EliteBooks as well, and I think that I like them better over ThinkPads. And I thought I'd better explain myself because I thought I might cause some consternation amongst some Linux nerds about that. The one thing that I really love about EliteBooks is the keyboard layout because they have dedicated home and page up and page down keys. That is fantastic. Alongside what you said, Nate, earlier as well, they're really easy to work on, at least some of the older models. I'm not quite sure about the newer ones.
I have a 10th generation. It's an 840 G7. It has captive screws for the bottom plate, and everything's
Nice.
easy to work on. Yeah, it's like whoever designed it, they thought about the end user. They didn't hide them under rubber feet or any of that garbage that they do on some machines. It's really easy to work on.
This one's just got a lock in the back. You slide it, and it takes off the back. The cover's like in 2 pieces. Then, and you take the back off, you can get to the battery and the hard drive all in one spot. Then there's 2 little screws, and you slide the front part of the plastic out of the bottom of it, and then it exposes the rest of the internals.
What is it about laptops when they make these things? As soon as you start pulling them apart, little clips start breaking off, and it's hard to put it back together because
Wouldn't happen on the
it's all-
EliteBook.
Yep.
This one's carbon fiber covered.
This one is the most difficult laptops to ever work on. It's called an Apple.
Yeah, I would never buy one of those.
Apples are
Actually, that's not true. I
really
might.
tough.
They don't want you to work on those.
No, you have to have, special screwdriver heads, or what do you call them thingies? Like, I don't know, the star-shaped ones. What the heck?
Right, torque
just to
screws.
get into the case itself. Then you have a different type of screw on the inside. Then you get through the first layer. Then there's a different type of screw. Yeah,
Oh, it's terrible.
But do you
And
work at a
Vince-
Genius Bar? That's the question you have to figure out.
I just give it to somebody that knows what they're doing. Let them do it. I'm not gonna. This thing's too
If
old for Genius
if it
Bar.
does help at all, I can tell you that the reason they use the different ones, even if they don't need to, is purely based on like mathematical calculations of like the different pieces. It actually is, they could have ignored it, but it was basically just kind of like, does this particular type of threading and does this particular type of bit make sense at like this level? And then they just did it. They didn't have to manufacture it that way. but they chose to. And automotive manufacturers do the same thing. They use like 8 different types of bolts and screws for things that could all be one, but because the calculation said, you know, it could be different. It could be like one different bit for here and one different bit for there, even though they're the same size on the other end.
Yeah, tell me about it. I have a fortune in my toolbox. I got about $20,000 worth of them funny fastener removers.
Yep.
Of course, this mathematical equation was designed to be used for how hard can we make it to actually fix something so that they actually have to go spend money at the proprietary places to get it fixed.
How high can we get the guy at the Genius Bar with his blood pressure to go before he croaks?
Well, no, they're trained. The people at the Genius Bar are trained. No, the blood pressure is the people that are sitting at home trying to, they do with the PC. You flip it over, you take off a few screws, you swap out the hard drive and go from there. No, the Mac, you got to take out, you got to have that special tool. And so you have to go down to the hardware store if you don't have it and try to figure out which one is which. So when I bought the Mac, I actually ended up buying one of these it's kind of like a iFixit kit.
Right.
But it's a different brand. I got it off Amazon. This was like, $50 cheaper. But it has all the goodies in it that the iFixit kit added, except for these doodads, the Allen wrenches and stuff like that. I added those in because of monitor stands and stuff. But yeah,
I actually think that they should use Torx bits instead of the cross recess or the Phillips head. And I only say that because they're less inclined to strip and wear out, especially like a.
It's providing they make the screw heads consistent and correct. I've gotten Torx screws, where they're in between size. This one fits too loose. This one, I can't even get it in there. And next thing you're wham, wham, wham with a hammer.
Oh,
yep.
The hammer.
I just replaced a MacBook keyboard for an old MacBook of my sister's recently, and I was astounded when I opened the thing up. Just the keyboard, mind you, 70 screws. I counted them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
70 screws holding the keyboard.
That's what I was saying. You got to get to those layers.
It was crazy.
No, I do know that, because I was in appliance manufacturing, and about the screws, they want to keep as many screws the same as possible, unless it's some sort of a pokey yoke thing where they want to make sure it's only installed in one, where they have to basically prevent it from being installed wrong or in the wrong spot, or whatever. And but then they use a lot of things with tabs and pins and whatnot to actually reduce the number of screws. I will say, very interestingly, that EliteBook, the speakers blew on it, and so I got a new set of speakers. Not a single screw held this thing in place. It was actually it has a little rubber bushings or here, and so it doesn't vibrate, and then it's just held in place with the back case. So very clever on the design in that EliteBook.
That is clever.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I'm very impressed with the EliteBook design. I've always enjoyed the Latitude, but I think there's something almost a little bit slightly more elite to the EliteBook.
I don't know why. I had the sense that HP was dead.
I thought so too.
They kind of came back out of nowhere, though. I'll say in the past few years, it's really confusing.
2 or 3 years, I feel like they got their head out of their fourth point of contact, and it's amazing.
HP is very, very big in the corporate world. I know Bank of America. That's pretty much all we use is HP desktops, HP laptops, and
in the server space, they're even pretty big.
And we actually have a contract with HP so when something breaks, really breaks, the laptops won't turn on or re-imaging and stuff like that, because on the help desk we're remote, so we can actually physically get the computers. So HP has certain locations where we were able to have techs on site, or then we would send out techs to pick up the laptop, meet up with the customer, the client, and get the laptop or desktop and fix it for them. So
this is a nice aluminum polished HP, but it's from 2013. And it's the keyboard on it lights up too. It's got Beats audio. Yeah, it's an NVM6. From what I understand, it's a college dude's laptop.
Definitely.
So that was before Beats was actually in Apple Apple thing. So I would imagine.
Yeah.
That was back when they put beats in the Fiat 500s, and let me tell you, the only thing it had was bass and nothing else. Absolutely nothing else.
That's all you need.
I have the opposite problem with this notebook. It's all high end and there is no bass to it. Or this new laptop I just got, it sounds better than all the other ones combined. It's got decent bass and it's not screeching high. And
I tell you, these little Bluetooth speakers, the JBL,
They're
those,
crazy loud.
These are amazing.
They're so good. Hey Nate.
Yes.
Have you noticed? I don't know if you when the last time you've run Windows on something, but like when you first get a device, do you like run it on Windows and like see if there's firmware and then move it to Linux? I know it's a silly question, but
so when I got my Elite book, it was a a part of my severance package when I got laid off last 2020. So it's been a couple years now. Almost. That doesn't matter. Anyway, but they gave it to me like right before Christmas of 2020, and I didn't really care. Actually, I left it boxed for a couple weeks until Wendy from my co-host on Now Linux Out Loud. She called me a Michael, and I was a little offended by that. So I opened it up and I started it in Windows and went through the process of going through everything, and it did all its stuff, and I ran Windows for about 30 seconds before I put Linux on it.
Nice.
So I couldn't, like, I just felt dirty, and I just didn't, like, it immediately like made me unhappy. So, but I was going to say about HPs real quick. So my CAD station that I used with my former employer, it was an HP ZBook, and I thought it was just the biggest piece of garbage. Like I wanted, like, the keyboard, I'd have to like really pound like my fingers really hard because keys just wouldn't work, and it just the absolute worst keyboard. It really wasn't that performant. The battery life wasn't very long. The fans would always kick on. It wasn't because it was old. It just like the NVIDIA GPU just didn't feel like it was tuned very well. So right before I turned it in, I actually installed Linux on it because I knew it was just turning it out whatever. So I put a different drive in it just to see how it would do. It ran a lot better on OpenSUSE than it ran on Windows. And actually the fans weren't kicked on all the time. I even ran it through its paces and everything, and it was a much better experience. But the keyboard still sucked, and I didn't like HP. So, but now I'm impressed with the Elite book. That's a whole different ball of wax.
That's
right
what
there.
which version do you get? What number? 86, 870?
I got the G8. Hang on, I can't remember. Man, I'm terrible.
It's the Elite one.
Yeah, well, there's different numbers. There's
I've had
830, 840, 850,
840 G7, 840 G7.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, we use those at the bank. Those are very, very, like when I got mine when I was on the L1 desk before we used the L2, we used HVD, so we didn't use laptops. But I looked at that thing, and that thing was actually 32 gigs of RAM, terabyte hard drive. I think it was like an i7, 8700 or whatever. It was actually a very, very, even though it was for business, I mean, it could handle just about anything you threw at it, minus my hard high-end gains, because obviously the graphics card on those things are crap. But
graphics on this one is pretty good.
Shikul, can I just return back to your question about the firmware on new machines? So I bought a couple of laptops secondhand, they're ID pads, and I've actually kept my Windows drives for that specific reason. I replaced the drives in them so I could run Linux. So I kept my Windows drives just for the reason of thinking that I might need firmware updates. But they were spinning disks anyway, so I wanted to replace them.
That makes sense.
But I'm not going to wipe them because just in case I need to do the firmware on them.
Now, with the
That's not a bad
IdeaPads,
idea.
did you have any issues with I have an IdeaPad. I don't know what year it is. It was my mom's, and when she passed, they found them all in the closet and whatever, and I got them. But it doesn't, when you put anything on there but Windows, the backlight on the screen, you cannot adjust the brightness. It stays at one brightness, and it's like low.
Mine have been okay. They're 8th gen Intel ones, so I'm not quite sure if the chipset's different.
Yeah, that's a lot.
They have changed a bit.
Now, when you guys buy a used laptop, do you guys actually inspect the BIOS before you actually do anything or purchase it?
Yep. Purchase it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I have a friend of mine had purchased a laptop and come to find out he couldn't do nothing with it because the BIOS was securely locked.
Oh, that's always annoying.
I don't know if it's true today, but at one time, pretty much just unplugging the CMOS battery would clear out all
Reset the
that.
BIOS.
No, we
Yeah.
tried that.
That's I mean that. Yeah, this is this is old man Nate here saying that.
Might have to reset. You might have to remove the CS battery, then hold the power button down for like things like.
You could
We
Six
went
to a
through the
minute.
internet really deep to figure out how to do this, and it would not unlock.
I know with a lot of Dell models, you can look up BIOS codes that will unlock a locked BIOS. I don't know if HP provides those types of backdoor codes, but on Dells, it's very handy to be able to look those up.
That's cool.
Speaking of Dells and BIOSes, I really wish I kind of would have kept the laptop, but it was one of the first Inspiron laptops that they had put mobile Ryzen in. And it was a few years back. But the BIOS, it was like they just completely shipped it with everything open. I could overclock the CPU, the memory. I could change everything. It was like the super basic, like inside BIOS. Like it looks like it came out of like the 1990s. It's just text-based normal stuff. But it let me overclock it. I was so excited about that. I wish more laptops would do that.
The BIOS in this laptop is it's like a tree down the side. It's got everything in it. It's got more junk in it than my desktop here for gaming has.
That's cool. Well, I want to say welcome, Adam. You joined the party a little bit late, but fashionably late, I'm sure. So welcome.
What up?
So we're just talking nerdy stuff, in the Linux Saloon. So I want to get to Eric. He had something he wanted to bring up. He's finding a new distro, and I know that it's been a bit of a challenge. What would you say the hang-ups are right now?
I'm trying to find something that I can be happy with, and
I got it. OpenSUSE.
How did I know you'd say that? Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
It's instinctive.
Yeah, my problem is, and I'm blaming, I'm running pop, and I'm blaming my problem on GNOME. I think it's GNOME. I don't know. But when I'm making videos using OBS, I'm getting a lot of like stuttering and stuff like that. So the system's not maxed out in any way. There's tons of memory, and the CPU's fine. Like everything else is perfectly fine. I'm just having issues where as I'm recording, I get this stuttering, and I don't see it while I'm recording. So then I create a whole video thinking, oh, okay, I've got that done. And then I go back. Right before this, I was trying to edit something, and I realized how bad it was, and I'm going to have to re-record it now. And it's happened to me like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks. And I'm tired of reading.
This is recording the desktop, you said?
It's recording a webcam, using my phone as a camera, and then the desktop. So I've got different scenes sort of.
Okay. Is it, are you using NVENC?
Both. I've tried both. I've tried software and NVENC.
Is your output on NVIDIA or is it out on Intel?
My output.
Like, is your video driver the current active display driver?
I'm on hybrid. I have it on the hybrid so that I can launch things using the discrete video card.
Then I am completely out of the loop. Good luck, sir.
No, that's exactly it. I've tried all the normal things, and it's just that's why I think it's something to do with maybe GNOME shell and because I've noticed that the shell will do that too as well. Every now and then it just sort of it like gacks out and gets all stupid, and like when menus stick and you're like, okay, I have to wait for the menu to go away. And
so I get none of that. I mean, my main system is NVIDIA. I record and desktop or window.
Yeah.
I get no breakup whatsoever.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So
which pop version are you on, Eric?
Whatever the latest one is.
2004, or did you upgrade?
No, I'm on the newest one.
2110.
Yeah, 2110.
I can tell you this, Eric. I play a lot of games, like newer ones too. And I found when I use something like Ubuntu, I get lower frame rates. The game sometimes shudders. But once I got away from a Ubuntu type distro and got like Debian or Arch are better distros to game on because there's less junk going on under the hood.
Yeah.
It seems
So
like
I'm
Ubuntu
just
is more modern than Debian. It seems like you'd have better like Mace and everything in Debian. So I don't know. I mean, in Ubuntu than over Debian.
But it boils down to how much available power you got and what's interrupting stuff in your machine to take care of tasks and stuff like that.
Have you checked the kernel messages to see what's going on? If there's anything like in the kernel that's saying it's having some troubles, like any warnings?
I've taken it to a certain degree, like as far as I'm really interested. That's why I'm looking to try something else to see if I can recreate the same scenario, but using, you know, a different desktop or a different distribution on the same hardware and see if there's a difference. So I already dual boot. I have Pop and I think I have Ubuntu as my second one. I don't even remember what's on there right now, but I just wanted to see if maybe it was GNOME or if it's Pop specifically. And so I think I'm going to try, I don't know. Somebody was saying that Fedora 35 is a little bit easier to deal with, without having to deal with all those extra RPM Fusion repositories and all that nonsense. So maybe I'll try Fedora. I like Cinnamon just because I think Cinnamon is a good sort of compromise between classic desktop layout and GTK stuff. I prefer GTK over Qt. So
that's what I use is Cinnamon.
Yeah.
The Muffin compositor that comes with Cinnamon is really great if you have got dual monitors, and one's like a 1440 and the other one's a 1080, and getting that all to work out right works great with Cinnamon.
Yeah. Yeah, Cinnamon. I've had great luck with Cinnamon.
Both Steve and I had some issues with Pop OS. I know Steve did. I definitely did as well when upgrading. I'm not sure whether a fresh install. I don't know if you've upgraded or you've done a fresh install.
It was a fresh. It was a fresh install for when we were taking a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And there's a lot of things about it I like. There's a lot of, you know, creature comfort type things, and you know, it's got a lot of things built in that work well on a laptop. And I mean, there's a lot of things I like about it, but I just can't handle if I can't create simple videos. And I'm not doing anything like complicated or, you know, extravagant or the taxing, you know, and for it to just be choppy and it's just garbage, you know, and I can't do it. So
I think the one thing that I've thought of with Pop OS is they do make their distro to suit the computers that they make. So I just sometimes wonder whether there's some conflicts there with their shell that they run, because it's designed for the computers that they make. I don't know. I'm just something
it's possible. There's something though about GNOME that I've noticed, and it's regardless of the distribution, is that if you're taxing your system, it to me seems like it's more likely to become non-responsive than other desktop environments. And I don't know if it's because of the single-threaded nature or like I don't know exactly what is behind.
I thought they got rid of the. I thought they're not running the single thread anymore. I thought they solved that issue.
There are more threads. I'm pretty sure they solved that issue with the current GNOME.
Oh, did they? Okay. Well, I know that if I'm running close to, like, if there's any sort of swapping going on with the you know, swap file or anything like that, like it gets really ugly and choppy. So I don't know. I think I'm just gonna try something different. And like I said, I feel like I've been through everything that's Ubuntu based. I've been through all the Arch stuff. You know, I'm gonna maybe try Fedora. I don't know.
I think Fedora would be a good choice, because I wouldn't choose, me personally, and nothing against the OpenSUSE people, but I don't like their GNOME implementation, because if you add extensions, it changes so quickly, things break. Like your extensions will break and whatnot. So I don't like that. Maybe there's some mitigations now, but at least there wasn't last time I tried GNOME. And then the other thing, like, I know that Fedora does a really good job with their GNOME implementation. I still like Ubuntu's better. Nothing against Fedora, but I think that they just have a more complete package when it comes to a GNOME implementation. But that's
Well, I think I'm going to get away from GNOME anyway. So if I did Fedora, I'm going to do their Cinnamon spin just to try that.
I think if you're on GNOME on like a long-term support, you're not going to have any problems with breakage. But if you're running an Arch Linux base, which I am, there's no doubt that the GNOME environment is going to update, which could possibly break extensions because there may not be support for it. So
Yeah,
I think that's sort of risky as well. So that could be a bit of a problem. So
I'm also not entirely sure why I don't like Plasma anymore. I used to be such a diehard Plasma fan, and honestly, every time I use it now, there's something about it that I cannot jive with. Like there's just
same.
I
it
can't
doesn't
wrap
make any
my brain
sense.
around all the settings.
It's not even so much the settings as it is just there's something about the way it looks and feels, and it just feels clunky to me for some reason, and
I love it.
I can't get around it. I don't know what it is that's stopping me, because I looked at Ubuntu Studio because I thought, oh, maybe that's an option, and they're using Plasma, and yeah, I don't know. I'm at that point where I don't really want to spend a lot of time just managing my machine. Like I have things I want to do and get done, and I don't have endless amounts of time to sit and like mess around with my machine. So I really just want something that's a stable base, and like I can, count on the fact that whenever I hit record and have an idea to do something, that I can do it and get it over with, instead of now, I recorded it earlier and I was in the mood to do it. Now I'm going to be tired by the time I get back to it, and it's going to be probably a couple of days before I do it. And so it just annoys me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And so anyway.
Yeah, that's frustrating, I must say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think being distribution homeless, I think is not very fun.
This is like a Distros Anonymous session, isn't it? We're trying to talk Eric into not hopping and trying to find his problem.
Honestly, I had this problem for a while when because I ended up using Windows for a little while because there was an application I wanted, and I think I burnt myself out distro hopping. But when I was finally ready and I came back, I was struggling because I was like, things had changed, and I was used to like a specific thing, but like there's so many options, and I just, and of course, I've got ADHD, which doesn't help with my distro hopping because my attention span doesn't last beyond the install screen. So it's just, I'm ready for another distro as soon as I install. But I think the hardest part is like actually picking one. Like it's weird. Like installing it's easy, using it is almost always easy, but picking one has been the hardest thing for me.
Yeah. Well, and the good news is that because of things like Flatpaks, it doesn't matter so much anymore, the underlying system and the fact that maybe it's not a rolling release, so it doesn't have the most up-to-date things. I don't care about that so much anymore, just because I have access to, newer versions of software through Flatpak and stuff like that. So maybe that will let me use, because last time I tried Fedora, I fought with it. Actually, no, the thing that really annoyed me about Fedora was it felt and looked great. Like for the first 4 or 5 days I was using it, I got all my stuff set up, I got everything moved over, and it all, set the way I wanted it, and everything seemed to be perfectly fine. And then I ran into some kind of weird problem where it was like, oh, well, this is really hard to do on Fedora because of the decisions they made around this and that and the other thing. And it was just like, dang it, like, I just spent all this time getting set up the way that I wanted it to be, and now that's, there's this problem that's going to either I have to spend like hours or days trying to figure out a way around it, or just go find something else. And so you're right, it's not the installing it, it's not the setting it up, it's the, can I actually use it to do all the things I want to do? And I'm not going to get to all of them within the first couple hours. I'm going to figure it out later down the line. And I've had that happen I was on Manjaro for a long time and was happy with it, and then I just started having all these weird problems with it, and I didn't trust it anymore. So then I was onto a different thing and onto a different thing. And so I'm just having that same thing where I'm hopping, but not because I'm enjoying doing it, not because I want to hop, but because I feel like I have to. Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why I run pretty much every operating system known to man. As far as I have Windows 10 machine, a Windows 11 machine. I have a Mac Mini that runs on array. Then I have an older Mac that runs, Catalina, another one that runs Mojave. I have all these different things. Like I won't upgrade the one that's on Mojave because it still supports the 32-bit. So if I have stuff I want to do on the Mac, in the Mac system that's 32-bit, I have that option.
Sounds to me like you're what's called a hoarder, Jason. I think we need
I'm
some.
what's called a nerd. I'm what's called a nerd. Super geek.
Yeah, actually,
I'm sitting in
I have all those too, so I can't say.
Yeah, see, I'm sitting in my living room right now because I'm currently jobless. I was a contractor for Bank of America, and the contract ended on the 15th. And luckily, hopefully Monday I get this. I more than likely have a job working with Cerner doing troubleshooting software and hardware for hospitals. Hopefully soon. I find out for sure for Monday.
I'm the IT director of several hospitals that use Cerner, so maybe we'll end up connecting sometime on the,
there you
on the
go.
phone. There we go.
So I've been bored because I've had too much free time on my hands. I'm used to working 8-hour plus days and and tinkering here and there. So I'm sitting in my living room because I decided, I sit in the same room and my office is also my bedroom. And I'm down there all day long. So I decided to migrate up here. I had a spare desk, so I set up a little mini nerd cave up here with just my Macs. So I had the Mac Mini, the 2 screens, and then my laptop here with a spare screen. So then my iPad and my iPhone. So I got the whole iPad ecosystem, or not iPad, but Mac ecosystem up here. But as far as what you were going through there, Eric, it was the I've been there many times with not with just necessarily Linux, but like that's why I kept the 32-bit version of a Mac system, and it's because you've run into those issues where they have upgraded and certain operating systems stop support for certain things, and you still like to use those certain pieces of software. But I found out that with Linux, there's pretty much two distros I always go back to. It's always is one of them's the top one is Mint. I don't know what it meant. It's just easy. I love the cinnamon spin. That's what I use. And then the other one that you talked about, which I use the ARM version of, which is Manjaro. I use that on my Raspberry Pi. So I have the Manjaro ARM on my Raspberry Pi, and then my laptop runs Linux Mint. And I've been pretty much on Linux Mint, other than our distro hopping days and stuff back when we used to do that a lot in Biddle, back in the Biddle days. Mint has been my go-to. Now, I don't do half the stuff that you do as far as streaming and OBS goes, so I don't know if that particular distro would fix your issue, but I mean, you can try old trusty. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and this laptop is getting older too, so it is possible there's a hardware fault at play too. So that's the other reason I want to try something different. So I don't know. I think I will give Fedora another shot, and instead of getting completely set up 100%, I think what I'll do is just get enough of it set up to recreate what I'm trying to do in POP and see if it's any better. And if it is better, then that lets me, then I can say, okay, I'm comfortable moving forward and putting all the extra effort into moving into this. So
I have a question. Has anyone, I've seen these refurb iMacs, basically the monitor, the big monitor type iMacs. I think the refurbs are going for about $120. Has anyone got one of those and tried putting Linux on it?
Not a old iMac.
What year?
I haven't personally tried to put anything Linux version on a Mac, but I've watched a lot of people do it on the. I'm part of Mac groups as well. That we do these type of little things here as well, and there's a lot of them that have done it, and it's not exactly as easy as you would think to put Linux on a Mac. It was a little troublesome, but they managed to do it.
Yeah.
So Jason,
Ubuntu versions.
Jason, you're cheating on us with a Mac group? I'm kidding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Windows, Mac, everything.
So I have run Linux on I think every Mac that I have, which is most versions over the years. I always maintain Macs too. So it works. It's not necessarily for the faint of heart. You'll find that it's pretty easy. Like the install goes pretty well. It works. It's the little things. Things occasionally like wireless driver problems. There's just a lot of little, hard to get solid Bluetooth support. Hard to get. There's a lot of little things that just don't work well. or require a whole lot of proprietary drivers. Again, some of the older models tend to work better and they could actually run Linux pretty well. There's whole ecosystems of groups that support those and do it. Newer ones, it's tremendously harder. I would shy away from anything that like 2019 and above. It gets much more difficult. But anyway, yeah, it works.
I've run Linux on MacBook Pros, but not on any of the iMacs. So,
well, as long as it's the Intel based iMacs, you should be fine. I mean, once you move into the Silicon ones, like the the M1s and whatever else they have out now, M Pros or whatever, that's when you may run into a little more difficulty with setting that up. But if you're using an Intel version, it's going to be no different than really not too much of a difference between a MacBook Pro and a iMac as far as installing Linux goes, because they basically use the same guts as far as the Bluetooth and the wireless and the cameras and all that stuff. They both have, until the newest MacBooks and the newest the silicon based ones, all the other ones all have the crappy I don't even think they're 1080p. I think they're only 720p cameras and things like that. So it shouldn't be the bigger difference. If you've done it on a MacBook, you should be able to do it on a iMac, no problem.
yeah, I've got to look up the specs and the the pass mark on those refurbs. I saw those recently, and then I kind of went past it, and but I was thinking, well, those are really nice monitors and equipment. Nice, Apple makes great equipment, but yeah, I'm just I wondered if anyone had tried that. So,
and a quick question there. Where are you looking? Where are you seeing these refurbs at? Is it like
so
eBay or?
No. This was either on Micro Center or maybe through Amazon. So I'll have to find. I have to go back and find it.
Well, the only reason I say that is that as long as you got to. All I'm saying is making sure it's a legit source, because the biggest issue with iMacs and basically anything Apple is that it can be activation locked. So if the person or persons that are selling it never signed out of their iCloud accounts, and they have like Find My Mac or Find My iPhone or that kind of thing turned on, you will never be able to use that. I like the App Store. You wouldn't be able to set it up or anything like that, because it's going to require that email address and that password. You just got to make sure that when you're buying it, that it is not activation locked.
Yeah, from what I understand, these were factory certified refurbs.
I'm just making sure you're not looking at Craigslist or eBay, because
no,
I've seen a lot of people buy like a phone or cell phone or something like that off of eBay or whatever, and luckily they paid PayPal because they had to send it back because it was somebody was selling basically more than likely a stolen device that was activation locked, and they couldn't use. It's basically a paperweight. And so with PayPal and now in eBay themselves actually will refund the money if you can prove that it is
I was just gonna say I've sold a couple of MacBooks and a couple of iPhones in the past before, and before I understood that there was this whole like activation lock thing that people run into, because I always sign out of everything and follow like the Apple instructions for resetting. I didn't realize that like a massive part of the resale iPhone MacBook thing, like a lot of it is just scummy stuff. Like it's incredibly easy to get screwed over if because the devices basically they protect themselves. It's like this isn't going to be useful if you steal it. But of course, people will steal and sell to somebody else who has no idea, which is horrible.
I have a Mac question for you here at the Linux Saloon. Let's pretend like somebody wants to get a Mac so we can remember why he hates it, but just so I have like access to the Apple, like some of the functions and features of the Apple ecosystem. Like, I want to be able to use it so I can help other people out, essentially, even though I loathe the idea. What would be a recommendation for a very cheap, inexpensive unit that I can just use? Like, what do I have to get that's not been totally shunned by Apple already, but I'm not going to do anything with it other than a distro exploration, basically. And maybe
Pre-Apple Silicon MacBook Air.
That, or I would actually go with the Mac Mini.
I if
you
you
don't
want
need if you don't need portability, I mean, it's still portable because it's
don't
not
need
that
portability.
big.
Mm.
But if you don't, the thing about with the difference between a MacBook Air and a MacBook Mini, Mac Mini, is that the Mini will have better ports for one. Mac, I don't think the Mac Air has any ports.
No.
So I mean, I highly recommend going, even if you want to get the basic version of the silicon version of it, is to get the base model. You know, I don't recommend anything below 16 gigs of RAM in one of those things.
Okay, just as cheap as possible and still able to access whatever the current iteration is of iTunes. Basically, is what I want.
Well,
That's
iTunes no
all I
longer
want.
exists.
Whatever
It's
the
now
current
music.
incarnation.
So you want the latest
incantation,
OS.
whatever.
So you want be able to go to Monterey. So yeah, so you would want. I think I think it's like I want to say it's 2016 and above. I had to look that up and get back to you, but I think it's a 2016 and above devices, Mac Minis, Mac Pros, and all that stuff are still upgradable to Monterey. Now, how long that'll last, God only knows. It's Apple. I think every time they do a new release, they kick off a year.
I'm going to dissent from the group a little bit too and say if I was looking for that, Nathan, I would go with the Apple Silicon. I would probably go with like the Mac Mini, the M1. And the reason for that is Apple is not known for long support for their old hardware platforms. So they're still selling Intel right now, but once they stop selling it, you probably got max 2 to 3 years before they just drop all support for it. That's what happened when they shifted from PowerPC. It did not last long.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want longevity, I'd go with the M1.
I'm going to do like a basic calculation. I don't plan on using it maybe more than once or twice a month, probably at best.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take that. I'm going to amortize that out to that time. So I'm just saying, I saw there's a link here. I didn't look at it yet. Yeah, so $300 for an iMac, 21-inch.
It's a Core i5 with 8 gig of RAM.
It's a little more spendy than I want, but
as far as Apple goes, you're probably not going to get much cheaper than that. Honestly, not something that's going to be modern enough to run the most latest version of the OS and everything. Like my MacBook I have here, I got that for $200 off of the Mac group that I'm part of. One of the guys that's there, but you can only go up to Catalina because it's a 2013. Like they were saying though, like John was saying, your best bet would definitely, I know you don't want to look, I would wait a little bit, obviously, because they're on the 8th, coming up here, March 8th, they're about to make an announcement with new releases of their Mac lineup. And the rumors are they're releasing a pro versions of the not pro, but like to do with the MacBooks, the M1 Max, M1 Pro, M1, whatever, and maybe even release the M2 chipset. So they're planning on doing an upgrade on the Mac Minis, as well as what the rumors are. They're going to do a pro version of the iMac, yada yada yada. I would wait, wait for this announcement to go down because it may lower the price of the current versions of the Mac Minis, depending on what they actually do announce. But definitely, like I'm running this little thing that I'm on right now on the 2020 M1 Mac Mini. It's technically not mine, it's my brother's. He never used it, so I snagged it from him.
Does he know you snagged it from him?
Yes, he actually
just checking.
Telling me he comes in every once in a while and says he wants it back. I tell him go away, because he'll never use it. It'll sit on his desk buried in PC parts because he's a PC guy. But anywho, and I think one thing he upgraded on this, other from the base model, was the RAM. He went from 8 to 16. Everything else he's got the 512 gig, hard drive. Whatever the base model specs were for the cores and the GPU cores, and I think it was about $1,000. That was back when it was basically new. But let me tell you, this thing is a beast. I was running my laptop, running video on my laptop here, and it was running at like 80 degrees. Got this Mac Mini running two screens, running multiple things on there, and it's sitting at 29 to 30 degrees.
What was John holding up on the screen?
I got a Power Mac 7300 here that'll fit
you
with your Commodore 64s.
You should be joining the MacYak group there, John.
Hey, I want to tell you this thing. This is a true story. All right, we shut down a hospital last year, and this thing, a Power Mac 7300 running system 7.5,
Yep.
was in operation at our radiology department. It was actually running a bone density machine, still in operation, still running along. They were actively using it in a hospital. Yep.
Yep. I've got a 2009 Classic Mac Pro that that I got from one of my previous jobs. They found them in the closet. They used to use it for a rendering farm, and they totally forgot they had them. They had like 8 of them, and they sold them to us. The 2 monitors that I have right here, these old crusty Acers that I have, like 20 inches. I got those 2 and the CMP, the Classic Mac Pro 2009 tower, and it's one of those old cheese grater towers.
Nice.
Dual core, dual processor Xeons. So I got the dual processor ones. Got everything else was base, like the video cards and all that stuff. I've since upgraded that to memory, but I got that for $200. 2 monitors in the tower for $200. So
That's awesome.
so I spent $400 total on my Mac. So I got lucky and blessed with those opportunities. But if you really want, the Mac downstairs can run Monterey, the 2009 Classic Mac Pro, but I have to essentially jailbreak it and run OpenCore on it to get it. And like certain things don't run, like the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth won't work if you do the OpenCore. But
I mean, my interest is I want to run Mint with Cinnamon.
Yeah, you want to do Linux. I leave with my Macs. I just left all the I have PC laptops that run all my I have 2 or 3 of those that run my versions, my Linuxes, plus a Raspberry Pi. So I leave my Macs with the Mac OS. Where you going, Bob? But yeah, I mean, for as far as you go, Nate, I would definitely go with I wouldn't go anything below probably 2018 if you want to stay with the Intel-based models. But like John said, there's no guarantee how long they'll support the latest version of the OS. And so your best bet was to go to Silicon for longevity. Even I know you don't want to spend that kind of money.
It's not gonna be worth it, probably.
But yeah, but if you just want to learn the Mac OS operating system and keep up to date with that type of things, I mean, they'll have documentation and stuff you can read, and they even have they should still have it out there. I don't know if they still have, but they used to have demos where you can actually play around in the operating system.
Can I suggest a free option potentially, Nate?
Yes,
there's a script that Wimpy does, Martin Wimpress, called QuickEmu. I'm not sure if you've heard about that.
I have.
But that supports the installation of Mac OS if you want to do it. It'll run
great.
a script. Yeah,
Perfect. All right.
It'll download the ISO. It'll install it for you. I think there are some issues with some things though, and it might work best on an Ubuntu-based system. But I think it's great.
Yeah,
I'll post a link.
You don't get like graphic acceleration and whatnot, but I mean,
That's right.
for your uses you were talking about, Nathan, I think QuickEmu would work great. I don't think you'd have any issue with it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna definitely give that a whirl. And free option for Nate. See, that's perfect.
It's
right. I'm gonna steal that.
That works well for just testing things out, but I had a hard time getting it to be performant. Excuse me. You can hack it around and change the memory allocations and things like that, but you can't really get good graphic acceleration. And
I don't need that.
You're not going to run Final Cut Pro or anything.
Yeah, no, but it's enough to run like Mac apps just to play around with it. Yeah.
That's basically I want a just enough Mac operating system to do just some very basic things, like to be able to access some of the Apple proprietary stuff.
Well, in terms of pass-throughs for hardware, I'm not sure how. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to play around with. That's gonna be more of like a QEMU thing to try to get the pass-through for hardware and all that stuff. So
it might be worth it. I saw Peter. You held something up that was interesting.
Looked like
actually, Esnix in the Zoom chat called it. It is a Macintosh LC2.
Yep, LC2.
Oh, wow.
So could I put Linux on this?
Probably.
Yes.
There is a 68K versions of Linux that are still being. I mean, they're still maintaining those.
Oh wow! I actually didn't know that.
It's probably not going to be. You're not going to run anything great on it, I don't think. But I bet there's probably some like ice.
So, if you can get Minecraft running on that, I please,
So,
please
Yeah.
do.
so believe it or not, the way I was introduced to Linux is probably a distro that I would bet maybe nobody here has ever even heard of. It was a very not a, but my first introduction to Linux was I used to work in a computer store and sold them. This was back in 1998, and I had a Mac customer. Customer used to come in and buy Macs from me all the time. He would bring me floppy disks of MK Linux, a little distro of Linux called MK Linux that ran on Macs. Like it ran on the Mac, the old new bus power PCs, like the 6100, 7100, those. And yeah, I would take those home and install Linux on little floppies on a old Mac, original PowerPC Macs. And anyway, that was my introduction to Linux. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. I would sit there at the login prompt and type help, trying to figure out what to do, and didn't get very far. But yeah, that 98 was the year I actually started using Linux.
And Peter, look up a channel on YouTube. It's called the guy's name is Sean, but his YouTube channel is called Action Retro, and he has put Linux on a few older Macs.
You know I'm not going to.
We're gonna you can come
There-
on out. It's
There's
okay.
a Debian 68K version.
Yep.
I asked some of the folks at SUSE if they could. They still had the 68K builders for building like the operating system, and they said, yeah, it's still there. It's shut off because nobody uses it, and if you were to turn it on, it would take away from everybody else's, like building all this stuff for everybody else. Like, so what would it take to set that up locally? Well, there's as part of Open Mic Night, I want to take discussions from the Destination Linux discourse forum, and there's some interesting conversations that were happening there, and I gotta find that link real quick here. There's a discussion that's happening: are specialty distributions bad for Linux? Do you think having these different specialty bespoke distributions, do you think that's actually bad for Linux as a whole?
What's an example of one of those?
What's a specialty? Yeah.
Well, let's say like
anything that's not main.
Is having people working on Peppermint, is that good for Linux as a whole or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, let's ask this: is there any dissenting opinion here? Does anyone think it's a bad thing?
Well, here's the idea. Now, I agree with you, but I'll be the dissenting. I'll be the what is that called?
Devil's advocate.
Yeah, there we go.
Devil's advocate.
Well, I'll just say I'll be obstinate and instead of cubicle Nate, and because I don't like devil's advocate. I'll be obstinate, and I'll say, well, I don't like if people are putting emphasis into Peppermint OS instead of like working on mainline Debian or whatever, then only a small portion of people are actually getting the benefits of Peppermint OS when you're taking away from the upstream of Debian.
That's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Because
if
a
you're
lot of those
developing Hannah
projects,
Montana, that'd be one thing.
a lot of
Well,
those
but it could-
projects end up contributing back upstream.
If
Plus-
Debian actually takes it,
Well, that's up to them.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the problem. A lot of times they
plus
don't take it.
users who use Peppermint will generate more Debian interest and support Debian in that sense.
Plus,
Okay.
it'll help people learn the Debian ecosystem and how the whole aptitude thing works to download
But-
stuff and things
there's
that are
em-
different.
Because
than
look at
ours.
it this way though. Those that may have not used or gotten into Debian, but like Peppermint and are going to give it a shot, even though it's not the same as the Ubuntu base. Now you have an interest, as Asnick says, it just maybe peaks at that going, oh, this is not what I thought it was. This is not so bad. Let me check out these other Debian, base or Debian itself. Is that a bad thing? No, it's a good thing.
All right.
Well,
Well, then
and also-
but why not just use MX Linux? They're all
Because it comes with everything. It's
Not necessarily.
got everything, but it's got, when I first tried MX Linux, I think it was 19, and I was still a noob. I got all these packages. I did not know what they did. I was overwhelmed quite quickly. Okay. When I tried Debian put some, I don't want to poo-poo on Debian, but they put some nonsense stuff that comes down with it with the net installer. You get all these goofy looking like 32-bit or 16-bit games that they ship with it. Like, did the guys up at the space station play these or something? I don't know.
Yeah, they do. But Peter, what are you going to say?
I was about to say, when you said specialty, I was more thinking of along the lines of penetration testing or audio, video, specialty distros. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay, that could be too. But we're picking on Peppermint right now, not in a mean way.
Yeah, but I'm answering your original question.
I think that it doesn't necessarily hurt Linux, and there's two primary things behind my logic here. The first is that every distribution or project on Linux is created for a purpose, right? It doesn't matter if it's just one user that wants it or if it's 100 users that want it. It exists because somebody wanted it. But the second reason, and this is kind of what backs that up, is that the people who are developing those things are developing it because they're interested in it or because it solves something that they need to happen, whether it be the success of their distribution or whether it be something else. But the reality of it is that if you have people working on things they're actually interested in, it's beneficial both to them and to whatever they're working on, versus if you didn't allow them or said, maybe they shouldn't do that, and they were forced to work on something that they weren't actually interested in, like if everybody just focused on one distribution or something, they're not going to be productive in the way that they're going to be working on something that they're actually interested in.
I can see that. Now, what I actually think is, I believe Linux is it's an art more than not just a science. And for the same reason painters paint and songwriters write songs, people create distributions. That's actually what I really think. But I just want to have the discussion of what is it that causes, what could there be detractors in specialty distributions? I think another one would be a good example would be like Farron OS, a really neat distribution, a very interesting expression of the desktop environment, but is it really good for Linux?
So I have so on Peppermint, they need a lot of work around documentation and such, of course, because where they're at in their in rebooting that, but that is work that could be spent on other distros. So I'll throw that out there.
Well, I was going to say too, like say these distros that they take Kubuntu and name it Agubuntu, I don't know, and then but all they do is throw on two different programs and a different wallpaper, and they made a distro. They might have had fun doing it, but is that good? Is that something that helps Linux, or is it a detractor to everything else? That, I made a distro, but no, you didn't. You just changed the name of it and threw on two different programs.
I got it. Rick, I keep skipping over you. I apologize.
No problem.
You didn't shout loud enough.
Hey, you. Yeah. I was wondering about I'm an author, as some of you might know. I've got like 13 books out for fiction stuff. Anyway, what I was going to say was that one of the things I heard the author say just this past weekend was that he always writes books he wants to read. And I think a lot of people make distros that they want to make because it solves an issue for them or something they feel they needed. Yeah, there's my book, one of my books. Yeah. And thanks, Peter. I'll pay you later. I was thinking in terms of you always want to write the books, like if there's only one type of book or one type of thing like that, you need these distros. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything because most people that do these distros probably wouldn't be involved in any of them, the other ones anyway, because they got interested in a community or a need or a purpose that they had in mind. They got excited about it, and then they want to make a distro. That's my take on it.
Well, here's another thought. So let's say, hypothetical here. Let's go back to Peppermint OS. Let's say something happens and the distro dies out, whatever reason. Now you've left a lot of people in the lurch because it wasn't a major upstream like what is not part of major upstream distribution. So there isn't a path for those people to go away from the specialty or boutique type distribution into something else. So now you may have actually hurt the user base of Linux because it did go away. Chickle.
A potentially also dissenting thing, words are hard, is that let's say a sort of small niche distribution comes out of nowhere and it's not necessarily reliably developed or made with the best security practices in mind. There have been instances where small distributions have made questionable decisions in regards to security, and they end up being quite popular. Word of mouth goes around, and people who don't know any better don't question it. And so maybe with something as important as an operating system that hosts all of your computing and, private information, is the responsibility, on the community to shoot it down and make sure people know that it's a risk and that there are serious issues with it? Or do we go to the source and actually, directly say, hey, like, you shouldn't even bother developing this? Like, it's hard to approach things like that, I think, too. That's a potential risk.
Yeah, I didn't even bring that part up.
I think things of poor quality like that will naturally be weeded out. So
eventually,
the word of mouth that spread the growth of a questionable Linux distro will eventually, that same word of mouth will kill it.
But then you have to ask then at what cost? So what is the cost then to users for loss of privacy, loss of data, loss of any number of things? But I don't want to answer that, John.
Well, first of all, I'd say it's a moot point because it is all open source, so that means people get to do whatever they want. But kind of what Schickle was saying before, it's all about passion. I think something that actually we lose sight of, and especially in these discussions lately about like how to fund open source development and that kind of stuff, which I'm in favor of people getting paid for their work. But I think we have a solution for that in commercial software. If you write commercial software that's valuable enough, people pay for it, right? As we see it all the time. Not that I don't want Linux developers to get paid or anything like that, but it is open source. And I think the real magic of Linux is the way it started, where people were scratching their own itch. They said, hey, I'm going to build something that does this. Maybe it does what I need, right? But maybe there's a bunch of stuff we could add. They put it out there and other people start adding to it. Hey, that's 60% of what I need. Let me add a couple things. And it gets better and better and better. And now we have a system that has pretty much taken over. In the server space, it's all Linux. I mean, yeah, you got a few Windows corporate servers here and there, but I mean, I don't know, like, we're pretty spoiled now. Linux has for the most part taken over when it comes to services and servers, and it's not because how it's being developed doesn't work, right? Anyway, things like the security stuff, yeah, absolutely. Could that tarnish some stuff? But that's not limited to Linux either. Hello Log4j, right? did Log4j kill Java? No. So I think a lot of that is not something to be highly concerned with. Is it going to happen? Yeah, absolutely. But
so you say it's kind of a hyperbolic statement then.
Yeah,
a little bit.
That's my thought.
Nothing can kill Java. 3 billion devices run Java.
I want to point out Sam Jovi. He sent a super chat, and thank you very much for that. He says he thinks many features eventually adopted by mainstream distros could be shut down if the ideas weren't proposed to a major distro. Success brings adoption. So that's, I think, another good point there.
Nate, you mentioned earlier the idea that people working on other things detracts from, say, if everybody was working on Debian or something. And that's just a fallacy to think that everybody would, if these distros didn't exist, then of course, everybody would just work on the same thing. It doesn't work that way. And to your point about Linux and software being, an art form, and the fact that people are expressing themselves through code, if you're doing that in the confines of someone else's structure and someone else's ideals, then you're not able to be as expressive as you might want to be otherwise. So when you talk about some of these distros that do, like Nitrix is a good example, man, they do something that's so visually different and so striking and artful You could say the same thing about Elementary if you like, that desktop. Those distributions do the things that they think are right and that they think benefit their users. This is all open source for the most part. Nobody's paying for it. So the idea that, if there's a bug or a project goes away or something like that, which happens from time to time, it's just the way the world works. Closed source software goes away, just because something's commercial doesn't mean it exists perpetually. So
Linux Ninja put in the chat, which he's so quiet and still. I do want to point that out. We saw the death of distro already. How many times? Yeah, we saw many distros go away. These large distros like CentOS are the ones that really hurt the community when they die. The death of a smaller specialty distro has a smaller blast radius. And that's a good point too. And probably it kind of dovetails on what Esnick says. If it's not good and people don't use it, then it kind of works itself out.
Yeah, I see the Linux community is quite fluid, and Antigos went away, and that was sad for many. But out of that grew Endeavor, and that's a thriving community.
And I would say that in many ways, Endeavor is possibly better than Antigros because they have a lesser technical debt than Antigros did, and they also had a path forward to migrate too. Linux Ninja said. Okay, so I guess Obstinate was wrong on that one. I think
he tried.
Yeah, he tried. Well, he's kind of a jerk.
So let me ask a question a little bit differently.
Okay.
What if we all, as a Linux community, focused our efforts on one distribution? What would happen then?
I honestly think that I can't remember what the law is, but basically, like, the larger something is, the fewer the number of people that actually are the main contributors to whatever that system is. And
it would be the ugliest, most awful, annoying distribution ever. That's for sure.
And the slowest to change or develop.
There'd be so much dissension amongst the ranks trying to figure out who's got the right idea, who doesn't.
Direction. Too many cooks.
Bureaucracy.
There'd be so much salt in the pot.
And somebody would probably sabotage it.
So Linux is these distributions have somehow kind of natively or naturally found probably the right mix of developers and right number, right? Peppermint's kind of got they've got the number of people they need right now. They're going for it, right? And the question is, adding more bodies doesn't always solve the problem, right?
And it doesn't, but it helps. I mean, you're getting some results, and I'm not just talking about Peppermint. So many small distros out there don't have that help, and it's like one person. But what Peppermint is doing is also Graphic's been doing a hell of a lot of documentating, so that if he leaves, or another one, it's already there. One thing Mark didn't do through his evolution of Peppermint was he didn't document very well. It was all his stuff up, so that we ran into the issue of not doing anything for over two years. But now going to the future, there's documentation out there. They have a plan. And it's kind of, and most people might not like the distro right now, but it's going to grow because they have some great ideas and some great plans that is going to change maybe some things. And it's going to be, it's nice to see. But there you go, Peter.
I think the thing with software too. Yeah, I agree with the one man shows are bad just because that's too much stress, too much pressure, too much responsibility. So it's good to at least have a small team, especially with overlapping skill sets, so that you can kind of push and pull things around and do pick up different things as you need. But there is definitely a diminishing return on adding too many people to software development. Like you can't just keep throwing more and more people at something and expect it to get better. It doesn't work that way.
It's like the idea, if you throw 2 women at one pregnancy and get it done in half the time.
Okay.
in development, that's the 2 pizza rule. As soon as you have a team larger than you can feed with 2 pizzas, you start having diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a flip side. to all that, and that is that there are a lot of behind the scenes packages that are a one person managed thing. And if the last few months have shown us anything, it's shown us that a lot of these behind the scenes packages that run a lot of the stuff need a lot more help. So how do we get people more involved with that?
That's I think that the forever challenge. I mean, I think when a project has itself like organized where they need different teams and you can break things down into smaller teams, that's when it works. But that's that's a matter of proper organization.
I think this is all very valuable conversation though, because it does. I think we all have our own ideas about this, but it's helpful for us to sort of drag it out and talk about it a little bit, because it is easy to lose sight of the fact that small distros are important and that they're interesting in a lot of different ways. And maybe it's not something that you personally want to use, but the idea that they're bringing new ideas forward. They are, thinking of different ways of doing this, things that have always been done a certain way. I know in software deployments, I used to go and talk to people in different settings, and I would say, well, why do you do this that way? And a lot of the time I'd get the answer, well, it's because we've always done it that way, right? And you get a lot of that sort of trap where you kind of do something a certain way because, well, we've just always done it that way. And whenever you see someone that isn't constricted by that, who does something different, it just seems so brilliant, because you're like, well, why didn't anyone think of that? Well, because no one has ever even thought to sit here and discuss the fact that we have always done it this way, and like, why do we do it this way? And so a lot of my job was sitting there getting people to tell me, like, okay, I understand you do it that way because you've always done it that way, but if you didn't have to do it that way, how would you want to do it? And so that's why I think these types of conversations are meaningful.
Yeah. And
that sounds like starting trouble.
And when we were doing the distribution explorations, I want to make sure, I think there was a couple of points where, it was valuable and people gave feedback to the developer and things actually changed that week, right? Where, Peppermint had just released, but then they actually made some changes that week, I believe. And I think that's really valuable. So when we're doing these distribution, explorations, we need to try to give back if there's a correct forum for giving that feedback.
Well, Vince, and you asked, why do you think more people don't get involved? I mean, what do you think the answer to that is? Do you have any thoughts on it, or?
So, I mean, my specific thoughts were more along the lines of, like that person who sabotaged his code because nobody was helping out or contributing, and all these other big companies were using it. I don't have a solution per se. I just feel that if you are also going to work your own little project, you have the talent and the skills and knowledge necessary for that. You could also put some of that effort into helping out something else that may still be valuable for your project too, further upstream. I think that's something you could consider doing. I'm not an IT professional. I don't have any sort of knowledge in that sort of stuff, but I think that we could all sort of contribute a little bit back, like Mark was saying, to distros that we explore, whether it be in the form of checking in on the forums from time to time. Maybe there's a question that we can answer that, even though if we don't use that particular distro, we may still know the answer to that question. So it's sort of trying to, I don't know, it sounds like we might even be spreading our own resources a bit thin by doing that, but I think it can still be helpful by actually making sure that these projects still get looked after, even though they may not get a lot of the limelight and attention.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. The idea that the corporate world, the for-profit world, makes millions and billions of dollars on the back of open source software, and these projects are essentially just left up to the few people that are willing to maintain it. I don't think that what the developer did is probably the most constructive way to solve that problem, but it also is born out of a frustration that I imagine it must be very difficult to deal with, because we see it time and time again. I mean, companies rely on open source software, but will not give even a small modicum, of what they earn off of that software back to the development. If the person that's building a system that is so central to what you're doing, and all it would take would be $20,000 a year and to a corporation, $20,000 a year is nothing, literally, like almost nothing. And so the idea that they just don't have a plan in place to say, we should just give a certain small percentage of this back to the developers that are upstream from us. And maybe that's just me, being idealistic, but it can't be that hard, right? So I don't know.
Peter,
it's how you end up with situations where something like Firefox is so beholden to Google because Google's the only one that's going to give them money to keep operating, which is just a damn shame because Firefox is such a good project and so many people use it and rely on it. Like if everybody gave $5, like they would be fine. So anyway, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I agree. That's I think why I say at the end of these broadcasts or streams, whatever, that be sure to tip your developers. I know that for me, I do support some developers out there that help make my computing life possible because I feel like I need to give back a little bit besides just.
As you point out in the chat room right now, we have Ali from Present Arms Linux. Another distro I like to support with my time and money is PC Linux OS. Nice little distro, very weird in some ways. It's been going for 20 years. So they're sitting there with a lovely community, a wonderful community. They've been together for a long time, and they've seen a lot of distros come and go as they keep going. And there's always a need for these little niche distros.
Yeah, for sure. John.
Sorry, I wasn't ready.
I apologize.
I was just gonna to what Eric was talking about. One of the challenges with that, again, I would love to see these people get paid, but so I'm in the executive suite in a corporation, right? In not fairly large. We've got about 1,000 employees or so, but the medical industry. The challenge for that, first of all, like. I actually do a ton of open source. So introduced into our environment. My preferred way to pay for them is I love the companies that'll do like service contracts, where we can just pay a service contract. That's easy, right? I can't have a conversation with my CFO to say, hey, here's 400 downstream projects that we utilize in some way, shape, or form, and they only take PayPal. Or something like, or whatever it is, like there's just no corporate mechanism for us to even pay that or cut a check. Some of the ones that we do support, I've actually come up with some creative ways to get them money because it's not as easy as you think, like when you get into some of these bigger corporations. But yeah, honestly, even if everything is totally open source, I love the way like Red Hat and some of these companies do business where it's 100% open source, not open core, any of this stuff. But hey, you know what? If you're using the project, you're getting use out of it. We buy a service contract. It's great. I've got one open source tool I use. I've had it in place for 12 years now. No, longer than that. Anyway, years. Never called them once for support, but we've paid them a $10,000 a year service contract for years and years and years, just as a way to give back. And I take it back. I think we've called for support one time ever. But we get that much use out of it. It's an incredible project, and it runs half of our workflows. So it's awesome.
Yeah, corporate purchasing is a weird thing. You're right. I don't know. I'm not saying it again. I know it's idealistic to think that way, and I'm not saying there's an easy solution, but I just, I've seen so many companies really, you look at their stack and it's like, wow, you have a lot of open source here. Like, you're relying pretty heavily on these projects. Do you know any of these people? Do you know anything about them? Do you know anything about the projects? Do or did it just look good?
To that, just recently, I was over at a counterpart's office going through some of their equipment in the rack, and this is one of these guys that even in 2022, he's still, Linux not ready for the enterprise. I don't do anything with Linux, this stuff. And I'm laughing because I'm looking at his rack, and I'm not kidding. 3/4 of the crap he's got in his rack is all running Linux. He doesn't even know it. He's got Cisco routers and Barracuda and all this stuff in there. It's all running Linux. And I'm like, yeah, Linux not ready. He's got no clue what he's even running in there,
Yep.
Great guy to have there in that position.
I think just also in regards to developing these little things that other things are built on, a big thing to consider is both interest as well as like incentive. The thing is even if you use something, building incentive for somebody to contribute to it is very hard when it's not the shiny thing at the front of the list that people are actually going to recognize and people are actually going to interact with. If you build a desktop environment, that's something people see. That's a big component that people see on top. But what they don't see is like the window manager underneath it. Right? They don't, nobody looks at GNOME and thinks, like, wow, those Mutter guys are doing great work. I'm sure some people do, but like Mutter's an insanely important component, but it's not a shiny thing that gets attention. It's not something that is going to be publicly recognizable or advertised beyond technical notes. So that's a really, really hard thing to do is to get people interested in actually building on these little things that isn't going to give them that kind of sort of feedback loop back, which not necessarily even just to get praise, it's not like clamoring for attention, but rather just that it's exhausting mentally to put your work and time into something and not really get any sort of feedback back from it, and a lot of these little components, there's really no method for that.
Yeah, I know that also contributing, like, I know with if you buy a subscription like to SUSE's Linux Enterprise Workstation, they actually do fund a lot of development. And also the Red Hat, that contract, they fund a lot of development too. So that even though you're giving it to a corporate entity, they are paying out people in the open source community.
I think that's the only way to make it work long term. So systems like that, where you're kind of handing it downstream, I think that's the only viable way for it to work.
Because they have mechanisms to do that within the company. So I know they're good stewards of the open source community. I did want to address another super chat that we got from Sam Jovi. Says, a universal wrapper package manager that runs on all distros and uses any available package managers under the hood could be a solution to adoption. That sounds complicated, but isn't Nix OS basically something that does that now?
Yeah.
Run pretty much.
Yeah.
So that
I
does
run,
actually exist.
I run Nix on Mac OS, actually. I install Nix packages on Mac OS. So it's not even just Linux. It even works on Mac OS and BSD.
That's crazy go nuts.
It is very crazy.
Yeah, I had no idea. I knew it ran on. You could run it within other Linux distributions, but I didn't know you could run it on non-Linux. That's actually very interesting. So there you go, Sam Jovi. Thanks for the super chat. And also, it sort of does exist. So you can. It's like the it's like Linux in the virus disease form, where it just infects everything. I like it. All right. So next week we are going to have a discussion on applications, and then potentially a news flight. We'll see how the things go. But we had a great discussion today. We didn't even get to any of the news, but we're just about we are out of time. Some of those applications that were on the recommended list to try for next week, just to have a discussion about it, was trying GNOME Web FlatHub for the FlatHub of that, because it's available, or the Falcon browser. So I'll get some little discussion on this, and it could be any number of applications. Just we're gonna have a discussion about it. So I as I'm saying this, I'm kind of sort of figuring out as we go. Something I would like to try that does kind of dovetail into Sam Jovi is, has anybody here tried the App Image Launcher besides Eric?
No.
Steve? Jinda? All right. So the App Image Launcher is it's an application essentially that takes and makes using app images within your system and makes them feel like native applications. When you load the app image up, it basically puts it in your menu and manages it all for you. You can very easily delete it and whatnot. So that's kind of the what I want people to try is App Image Launcher, but then try some other application with it. Try some applications that you may normally have, as a Flatpak or Snap or whatever, and see how you like it with the App Image Launcher. And
now, Nate, that is different from the App Image store, right? Because there's like an App Image type store also.
It is.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Or is it the same thing?
No, it's different.
It's okay. But you can use the app image stuff. You can download app images from the store and then load them up with the app image launcher. Try some of those like GNOME Web or Falcon because they're browsers you may not have installed on your system. And I don't even know if there are necessarily app images for those, but just try some app images that you normally have as a package or Snap or Flatpak and see how you like it, how it's different. See if there's how theming, if it's better or worse or whatnot, and give that a try. And then we'll have some discussions about it next week. And if you have any application suggestions that you want to give for future application exploration episodes, please suggest them in the Telegram. You can email it to either me at cubiclenate.com or show at linuxsaloon.com, whatever you want to do. Anything at application selection at linuxsaloon.com. And we'll give that a try. And then also 2 weeks from now, we're going to do the Slackware Distro Exploration. So if you also want to spin up a Slackware, you got 2 weeks to explore this because this is not your grandma's distribution. Well, maybe it is your grandma's distribution. This is not your typical distribution. So Slackware, latest Slackware, it's out. Give it a try. Linux User Space is going to have their episode's going to drop, I believe, on the 14th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eris. I get my dates a little bit mixed up here. But if you want to start playing with that and exploring that, trying to muddle your way through that, there's you can get help on the Telegram here for the Linux Saloon Telegram or the Linux User Space Telegram. They can help you out there too as well. I said too and as well. That made no sense. All right. Did anybody have anything else they want to say here for our last call before we close it up? Anything you want to contribute or mention? All right.
I had a question.
Yes, please.
I had a question about the applications that we're going to explore. Is that a fixed list or
no.
okay?
Just contribute anything you like. The idea is we want to explore some applications that anybody can install on pretty much any distribution. So Flatpak or App Image or Snap are fine. Preferably not necessarily the TARD GZ apps because those may take a little bit more effort for people. But the things that are really easy for any user, I want to make a really low barrier of entry on this one. So that's what I'd prefer.
And is there criteria that we're going to be evaluating that, or that'll be for us to bring to the table?
That'll be for us to bring to the table. Usability, user experience, stability, any of the basic things like, do I have a good experience using this application? Does this application fit a need or could it fit a need for me? So that'd pretty much be it. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Okay, we've got an unsung hero in our chat room, Anna Rita. She posted that she runs a home daycare and parents talk to her, and when they tell me she says, they tell me they're hating Windows OS. I just tell them about Linux OS, and some have switched to it, and I've even got chocolate boxes to thank me. So
nice.
she got chocolate.
That's more than I've ever gotten for telling someone about Linux.
So if you want chocolate, promote Linux.
Well, you probably have to be a special kind of person to actually get chocolate, though. I think they're gonna look at me and just give me a dirty look, quite honestly. So before we get out of here, so Rick, you're doing another stream on Wednesday, correct?
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be yet. So
okay, I probably screwed things up for you. So you're welcome. Mark, you have your Atlanta Linux user group is meeting tomorrow.
That's right. Every Sunday, 3 to 6 Eastern time. We are open to help people with their problems with Linux and open source. The website for that is ale.org. That has all the meeting information, ale.org.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're running that. It sounds like it's a very hopping good time.
I was on there 3 weeks ago, maybe. And yeah, it was nice. It's a good mix of some folks and people come in and ask questions, and it's nice. It's just a good time to kind of hang out and talk.
I appreciate the hops joke, Nate. That was clever.
It was
good.
unintentional, so I'm not going to take credit.
So Linux Ninja is asking when we will be doing the in-person ale in Atlanta. Right. I'm not sure we're going to go back to in-person. I want to do a Linux in-person meeting, but we found it last time we tried to do a hybrid mix in online, in person and online, it just didn't work out so well. So I think we'll go to Linux Ninja's meeting for in person, and then we'll do the Ale online. How about that?
That works.
Yeah.
It's too far for me to drive anyway, so I wouldn't be able to join in person.
There's an airport nearby, Nate.
So I don't like flying at all.
We also have Amtrak.
Okay, well there we go. I don't like trains either. So
well, look up a Linux user group in your neighborhood. When I used to travel for work and I was not going to my normal Linux group, I made my own. I had a Linux meeting in Luxembourg and one in Reston, Virginia. It was just
That's
me
awesome.
at a Panera Bread, and a couple of people showed up.
That's awesome. I was thinking about at the local library, it might be kind of fun to once a month kind of get some people together to play with hardware. But all right, and also tomorrow, Destination Linux will be streaming live at 1 p.m. Eastern. And also tomorrow, there's a very special man in here that needs to be trolled at 9 a.m. Eastern or 8 a.m. Central. Steve, you're going to have the coffee clash tomorrow, I'm assuming?
I have nothing planned. We'll see.
Any of those links that I've given you in the work group room, go ahead and check those out and just steal from there. It's open source. And then also the Linux user space, the next episode comes out on the 14th. And that'll be their episode on Slackware. And also Linux Out Loud. I'm another podcast that I'm on that comes out Wednesday. I'm sure Matt said something not nice to me on that. That'll get through the Wendy checker. So also more stuff for me on cubiclate.com if you want to know more about what I do. So I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and on the YouTube stream, as well as everyone watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun, enjoy our technology, because Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. Thank you for stopping by, and be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi.
Bye. See ya.
I'm sad nobody sang.